Richard Bock has been practicing and teaching meditation, breathwork, aquatic bodywork, and all forms of true contact for over 20 years now. True contact is his life's work. Richard has taught the essentials of true contact in the US, Europe, India, and Asia. Having been born in northern Bavaria in Germany, he lived in India and served and taught as a Hindu priest in an ashram for 15 years. A long history of meditation and bhakti yoga serve as the foundation for his mastery level work in healing and teaching. Welcome to Women's Broadcast Television Network here on Quantum Living Live with Ilona Selke. I have a very special guest for you today, Richard Bock, who lives in the United States but right now is here with us in Bali in the Shambhala Retreat Center, and he's had a very wild life. He did what teenagers do. He broke out, went to India, and went on a wild search, the quest for what life is about, what life really is about in terms of soul awareness, in terms of purpose in life. And I invited him here today because he went full circle, all the way from being a monk in India to living a householder life in America to breaking out again. And with his ripe experience of almost 60-ish years, he's coming with a rich wisdom, and he'll do experiments with us and tell us about breath work, how we can experience ecstasy in our daily life. We don't have to become monks to get to where he has come to through all of his experiences.
That's right. Yeah.
All right, Richard, nice to meet you.
Beautiful introduction, thank you.
Yeah. And I would love, of course, to make sure you teach us something here today.
Okay.
I would like to come away with, wow, okay, I can do something.
Yes.
All right. So tell us in a little nutshell, you went to India and you did what teenagers do who seek the greater meaning in life. You went to live in the Himalayas.
Yeah, I drove a VW van to India from Germany in 1975, and I was 18 years old. I basically ran away. I had no idea that I would be gone, and my mom knew. She said, "You're not coming back." And I said, "No, I'm coming back in a few months." She shook her head. She knew. I never came back. I mean, I came back for visits. But
so had the Beatles already gone to Rishikesh and met the Maharishi, famous yogi there?
Yeah.
So you went on the trail of the Beatles, so to speak.
In some ways, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. There wasn't any idea of any spiritual journey when I left.
Okay,
I just knew I had to get out of Germany. And on the way down there, I read Siddhartha. I read the first German translation of Castaneda's book, The Teaching of Don Juan.
And Siddhartha, just for the viewers who may not know, it's from Hermann Hesse, a German author, an amazing book, which has helped a lot of people dive into the quest for what the purpose of life is and what soul awareness is about. Siddhartha is the quest from the prince, the life of Buddha, who was living in the riches and became a sadhu, a renunciate, and that's what you did.
Yeah, that's what happened. By the time I arrived in India, I was so deeply affected by the culture, by the separation from the programming that I was under in Germany, very effective mind programming the Germans have, and being removed from that and having my heart a bit more open, I had several experiences that showed me that I was not living my truth.
So you were here in the Himalayas by yourself?
I went into the Himalayas. I started out in Goa. I was really drawn to the Himalayas. I believed that in order to become enlightened, I would have to fast for 30 days. I had all these ideas of becoming pure, of attaining some certain state. And in the first year, I didn't want to have a teacher. I believed that I can attain this on my own. In fact, I read a little booklet where this teacher that had written the book, in the introduction, he said he attained enlightenment on his own without a guru. And so I closed the book and I said, I'm going to do that too. So I was very proud.
Yes.
And after, and I had given away all my possessions. So I had a blanket and a passport and a little diary and a pen. I eventually ended up with 2 pieces of cloth. I didn't even have sandals anymore. I was completely happy, free. After I came out of the Himalayas, I walked along the Ganges, just without possessions, without anywhere to go.
Begging for food?
No, Never once begged.
What did you do?
I was too proud. I only ate when I was invited.
Uh-huh. And you got invited regularly?
Yeah, apparently. Yeah, was quite healthy actually. A little bit on the skinny side.
Okay.
But I was 19 and I was full of aliveness. And
what did that do for you, this renunciation, is giving everything away?
A deep grokking, a deep understanding that I am taken care of. That money wasn't the source of life.
And not the source of happiness.
Not the source of happiness for sure. And I didn't want to go back to Germany. I didn't want to go back to the West because I felt sheltered in India. In India, people respect the journey I was on.
Because it's a tradition to go on a quest.
Right.
And
so when they saw me, even though I was a Westerner, they saw I wasn't a tourist because I didn't have a backpack. And they very quickly got it that I was a renunciate. Yeah, or what sometimes it's called a mendicant.
okay.
Yeah, that word isn't very much used in the English language, but a mendicant is someone who is simply traveling and depending on God's grace.
And that's a cultural accepted thing to do.
Yes, yes.
So let's fast forward a little bit. You decided you needed a teacher and you went into an ashram.
I didn't really consciously make that decision until I sat in front of this particular teacher.
Yeah.
And I just opened my heart. There was a lot of chanting going on. It was a bhakti yoga tradition. And
It's devotional, heart-opening.
Heart-opening, lots of singing, lots of worship, prayers, dancing. And I was able, in that ashram, I was able to study. I was very hungry to get my hands on a Bhagavad Gita. And my English wasn't so good yet. So they had some German translations of the Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavad Purana also. And so I totally dove into the ashram life and devoted myself, studied the Vedas.
And if you summarized what this 7-year time period brought to you, you became a renunciate, you became a celibate, you renounced possession, sexuality, relationships. You simply said, I want to find God.
And in those days, God was still outside a bit. It wasn't so much finding it in myself. It was still a relationship.
Okay.
Yeah. And even though, even today, it is a relationship, but it's not as it was then. Then it was much more just a relationship. And in the Bhakti Yoga tradition, you're cultivating that.
Yes.
You're cultivating a personal relationship with God that is, although omnipresent and omnipotent, it has personal character.
We do that here in the West. We do it we focus on Jesus, who is the intermediary. In India, they focus on Krishna, let's say, with the comparable intermediary. It's a personal thing because how do you relate to the eternal? How do you relate to the source as an impersonal something? So it makes sense that that is a step, and a lot of people on the planet need that type of training, because to say just connect with God, it's like, where? Okay, so
it was a very personal thing. There was worship of a deity, and through the singing, through the mantra meditation, through the personal mantra meditation. And I very quickly began having realizations where everything started to reveal itself as God. And in between those realizations, I would go back to some identification. And sexual desire came after 7 years, really strong. I began struggling with my celibacy. So
only after 7 years?
The struggle started after 4 years, but the first 4 years were like I was completely free of any sexual desire. I did not have to try to be celibate. After 4 years, because I had taken a vow of celibacy, it wasn't a lifetime vow of celibacy. I could always choose to get married. But I was in this in-between state. Should I get married? Should I stay celibate? My teacher kept saying, stay celibate. It was really hard.
Especially when you're 24.
And so I was a very passionate person. I still am. But so finally my teacher agreed
to let you go.
And I got married, and I still lived in the ashram, but as a householder.
So now, as a householder, you had a wife, you had children. You had one wife. You had several children.
I had 2 children.
And you lived there and still prayed and dedicated yourself to God.
Completely just working for the ashram. It wasn't, everything was done as a service to God.
Okay.
And so after many years of doing that and still struggling with the celibacy issue, because even as a householder, in this particular tradition I was in, even as a householder, you're only supposed to have sex to procreate.
To make a child.
Yeah. So
like the Catholic Church says.
Very Catholic.
That's why Catholics have so many children.
Yeah. So it was an arranged marriage, by my teacher. And after all these years of being married, what happened is that I broke my vows with my wife, even because we had more sex than we were very much enjoyed sex. But something happened there towards the end of my marriage where my heart broke open. I discovered my emotions. I discovered my anger, my rage. I discovered how much stuff I had with my father still. I discovered what actually drove me to the Himalayas. This immense pain from my childhood of needing to prove myself as a saint, of needing to convince my father that I wasn't evil. He treated me in a very difficult way. It was very abusive. And so coming to terms with all of that, my heart broke open more and more and more. I completely fell in love with myself and with life. I could hardly chant my mantras without bawling my eyes out. I would just, very emotional. I came back to my family after a long trip and fell in love with my wife for the first time. Really, deeply, this big opening, and our sexuality completely transformed. And instead of the pleasure-rubbing sex that we all know, we discovered this stillness that took us to places that were unimaginable before. And she was not able to contain that on her own. At that point, I had started a business. I was still living in the ashram. She could only come into that space and that state when I was around personally. And when I would go on a business trip, she would, her friends would tell her, hey, this is bad, this is not according to the philosophy, he's not following the books. And so she would be in this total turmoil and didn't know what to choose. And so we actually decided to break up. And at that point I knew I needed to leave the ashram. I needed to not follow a book or follow vows or follow a teacher, that I needed to find what my heart is calling for. How do I know what's right and not right? How do I know what is right for me? How do I know what governs my life? And I knew that was in my heart. It was really obvious. And I knew I needed a place where I could practice that and make mistakes and not be punished for it. And I found Harbin Hot Springs. I drove up to the gates of Harbin Hot Springs, and there was a community that didn't have a philosophy you had to follow.
They were a community dedicated to personal growth. It wasn't a community that was based on one leader. It was lots of leaders coming together, teaching other people, much like what we have here in the centers, various centers here on Bali or all around the world. Not a one-person ashram, but it's like a collective teacher that is a body of teacher that is coming, and people come in and study.
Right.
Yes. And you became a teacher at Harbin.
Yeah, so the core of what was being taught there, that was the gift that I developed and cultivated for myself, was that as soon as I arrived there, somebody floated me in the water, and I went into a state of complete relaxation, and through that relaxation into total bliss, into total oneness. And I recognized that how easy it is to come into this when we relax.
Deep surrender.
And in that moment, I vowed to myself, if I can feel like this, if I can assist other people into relaxing and experiencing their true nature just by relaxing, then that's what I'm doing for a living.
So for some people who may not know about this, Dr. John Lilly, who did the dolphin research, actually developed the flotation tank where you can do this experience on your own. And it was a isolation tank in which you lay down, you close your eyes, it's full of salt water, and you just lay there. And people had out-of-body experiences. They experienced bliss or just deep stillness. And what you do and what other people have done, it's called water shiatsu, wa-tsu. And you are being held by a practitioner. And you, without any agenda, he just or she just assists you in holding you open to the universe, supported by the warm water around you. And then people go into this fluid motion of letting go of any identity, who they are, and do the fast-forward meditation experience in the water, in the womb of life.
My teaching partner, she calls it instant meditation, just add water.
Yeah, just add water.
And so when the practitioner is in a deeply relaxed place and in that place of total connectedness with everything and is really attending to the person, it is completely effortless to feel safe.
No, that's something people can search out, look up on the internet, floating tanks, lily tanks they're called, or Watsu practitioners in their area.
And then what I learned after learning Watsu is water dance.
Yes.
And in water dance you're being taken underwater. And so the relaxation and the sense of safety is so deep that with nose clips on, the practitioner literally takes you underwater and you go into these states where you feel like, I don't ever want to come up again.
I'll be playing some footage for you that we took in Hawaii, where we used to live, where Lilia Kanjeni was teaching water dance. So you see a little bit of what it looks like, maybe some photographs of some of these sessions, so the viewer can get a taste for it. And now you've developed a special approach to accessing deep states of consciousness through breath. So it's like instant meditation on steroids.
You could say that, yes.
How does that work? What happens with a person and what do they go through?
So one of my teachers was a Vipassana teacher, and he noticed that Western people had a really hard time sitting still for days on end. And he discovered that when he combined the approach of Vipassana with conscious connected breathing, a full body breath, where there is no pauses between the breath, it charges the body.
So you breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. So you breathe a lot more oxygen in than you normally are used to. It hyper-oxygenates our system.
And in that state of physical, you may call it arousal, where the whole body is charged, if you can stay present, a lot of things that keep you from recognizing true nature, they come to the surface. Old memories, old beliefs, old feelings that haven't been felt all the way through, traumas that have been locked in the body because it hasn't felt safe to relax. And they can come to the surface. And when we can stay really present and just stay embodied, rather than trying to fix something in the past, the body can release, the body can let go, the mind can release and let go. And one of the things that people experience quite often is, in India it's called satori, is a momentary experience of wakefulness, of completely like, I am none of these things, I am life itself, or however that comes.
I'm not the form, I'm not the identity, I'm not my job, I'm not my clothing, my looks. I am consciousness, alive and fully present.
I want to take it a little further. Or I am all of that. Because when we say I'm not this body, we're already in a little bit...
Not just this body, right.
But it's like when I have the full experience of I am this.
I am.
Then it's like when we say body, we are naming something as if it was static. But body isn't what we ever think it is. It is constantly changing. It is made of galaxies, right? And so it is this experience.
Living hologram, truly.
And so when we say I'm none of this, it is that I'm none of the concepts of what I had believed to be true. That I am life itself.
I am the current.
Yes.
I am the light bulb that shines up and illuminates the film.
Yes,
the actor in the film may take on a life, have personality, but in truth, I am that which pulsates through all the form.
Right on.
Yeah. So when you took on the vows to be celibate, to take on your quest to God, you also then found out you had a lot of pent-up emotions, undigested negative emotions, which lots of us have, don't we? You found out that really what it took is maybe deep relaxation and intensity of breath that helped you break through the, what shall we call it, the mantle, the protection.
Yeah. As you're speaking, I want to say that to have a resource, that to break through those old barriers, we need to feel resourced. And the breath, and the breath is a resource, because when I am more alive, not only do these things come up, but I'm also more present to the fact that all these things are from the past, and I can let go now. And maybe my body needs to shake, or maybe I need to move, or whatever it is. But I'm actually a capable adult. I'm no longer the infant that is helpless. I'm capable enough to just be with these emotions, with these feelings, with these sensations, regardless of how uncomfortable they are.
Because as a child, we typically weren't as resourceful. And we created what psychology